The history of the Khazar and Karaite Jews continues to spark discussion today. There are claims that some Turkic communities, including the Khalys, Kabar, Kipchak, Cossacks, and others, adopted Judaism. Generally, Turks have embraced not Talmudic Judaism, but rather the teachings of the Torah. An exception to this is the Crimean Jewish community known as the Krimchaks, who are approximately 3,000 in number and are recognized as Talmudic Jews. The Khazar Khaganate, or simply the, was a Turkic state that flourished between the 7th and 11th centuries across a vast territory surrounding the Caspian Sea, extending from Lake Van and the shores of the Black Sea to Kiev, and from the Aral Sea to Hungary. The term Khazar is derived from the root Khaz, meaning to wander. Thus, Khazar signifies one who roams or unbound to a specific place. According to the historical work Hudud al-Alam, the Khazar Khans descended from the Ansad dynasty, which has been claimed to have connections to the Ashina clan of the Western Gulf Turks and originated from Central Asia. It is possible that the Khazars were once part of the tribes associated with the Great Hunnic Empire. In Byzantine sources after 586, the Khazars are referred to as Turks. In the early periods when Judaism had not yet solidified as a national religion, various nations and ethnicities adopted Judaism due to missionary activities, political pressures, or prevailing political context. Today, we observe numerous individuals of diverse backgrounds identifying as Jews and living according to Jewish customs and traditions. For instance, during the 6th century CE, it is documented that some Himyarite Arabs, particularly under their king Zu-Nuwas, adopted Judaism. Alongside the Arabs, the Beta Israel, commonly referred to as Falasha, represent Ethiopian Jews. Additionally, Indian Jews of various backgrounds, Kurdish Jews residing between southeastern Anatolia, northern Iraq, and southwestern Iran, and Mountain Jews living in northern Azerbaijan and Dagestan are concrete examples of different ethnic groups embracing Judaism. After the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, a significant number of these Jews from diverse ethnic backgrounds migrated to Israel, whether voluntarily or through measures that facilitated their migration. Many continued to live in their historic regions after receiving Israeli citizenship. The impact of the Khazar Turks on the Jewish community is profound, influencing their appearances and lifestyles. The physical characteristics of Jews, such as lighter hair, colored eyes, and distinctive nose structures, can be traced back to Khazar ancestry. We will explore this topic further in the later sections of the video, delving deeply into the origins, lifestyle, and appearance of the Khazar Turks. If you're curious about these intriguing aspects, I strongly recommend watching the video until the end. This video will serve as a valuable guide for your academic or personal projects, whether for assignments, research, or simply satisfying your curiosity. Now, let's continue from where we left off, dear friends. Regarding the conversion of certain Turkic communities to Judaism, extensive and detailed research exists. The claims surrounding the Khazar and Karaite Jews, as well as the adoption of Judaism by segments of the Khalys, Kabar, Kipchak, Cossack, and other Turkic groups, remain topics of discussion to this day. Turks have predominantly accepted Torah-based Judaism rather than Talmudic Judaism, with the notable exception of the Krimchaks in Crimea. In the early periods when Judaism had not yet taken on a national identity, various ethnic groups adopted Judaism due to missionary activities, political pressures, or prevailing political contexts. We still observe many individuals from different ethnic backgrounds identifying as Jewish and living according to Jewish traditions and customs today. For instance, in the 6th century AD, we know that some Himyarite Arabs led by their king Zu-Nuwas adopted Judaism. Similarly, modern communities such as the Ethiopian Jews known as Falasha, Indian Jews, Kurdish Jews living in southeastern Anatolia, northern Azerbaijan, and the Mountain Jews of Dagestan serve as clear examples of various ethnic groups embracing Judaism. After the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, many of these Jews from different ethnic backgrounds migrated to Israel or were granted citizenship, allowing them to continue their lives in their historical regions. The adoption of Judaism by certain Turkic communities is a subject of extensive and detailed studies. The claims regarding Khazar and Karai Jews, as well as certain groups among the Kalis, Kabar, Kipchak, Kazakh, and other Turkic peoples embracing Judaism, remained an area of ongoing research and discussion. In general, Turks have accepted biblical Judaism rather than Talmudic Judaism. An exception to this is the Krimchaks, a Turkish Jewish community in Crimea, who are known for their adherence to Talmudic Judaism. The adoption of Judaism by the Khazars, a Turkish-origin empire that ruled for 3 centuries, 650–969, is particularly intriguing compared to other cultures. The word Khazar is believed to derive from the root Khaz, meaning to wander, ultimately signifying Khazar or wanderer, which reflects a people unbound to a specific territory. While a few historians may differ, the consensus among scholars is that the Khazars were of Turkish origin. Arab historians noted that the Khazars were referred to as Hazaran in Persian and Sabar in Turkish, suggesting they were the successors of the Sabirs, who formed the western branch of the Göktürk Khaganate. The year 558 AD marks the establishment of the Khazar state under a Göktürk Khan of the Asina lineage. The Khazars achieved full independence from the Göktürk Empire around 620 AD. By the mid-7th century, as Islam rapidly spread, the Khazars and Islamic armies began to confront each other. During the Caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab, 642 AD, Islamic forces captured the region known today as Durban, referred to as Bab al-Abwab, the Gate of Gates, which was within the Khazar Empire's boundaries. In the time of Caliph Osman, 652 AD, an Islamic army led by Salman ibn Rabia advanced into Khazar territory, reaching Belansar. The Battle of Belansar, recognized as the first Arab-Khazar conflict in history, resulted in a Khazar victory, and Salman ibn Rabia was martyred during the engagement. The hostilities between the Khazars and Islamic armies began to wane by the end of the 7th century, shifting the Arabs' strategy to a more defensive posture. Historical sources indicate that during the reign of Caliph al-Ma'mun, the Khazars were invited to Islam, and the Khazar Khan accepted the invitation and converted. Following this period, relations between the Arabs and Khazars normalized, with no further military confrontations. The majority of Khazar soldiers were Muslim, particularly from the Kharzm region, and they served as a barrier against the Russians attempting to invade Islamic lands. Ironically, the Islamic mission that began in the Caucasus during Umar's era, which might have extended to Europe, was interrupted by the Khazars. Later, it was also the Khazars who thwarted the Russian incursions into Islamic territories. Two existing Khazar documents written in Hebrew provide evidence that the Khazars utilized the Hebrew alphabet. However, there are various opinions regarding the language they spoke. Russian researchers assert that the Khazar language closely resembles that of the Volga, Idil Bulgars, and is also related to Chuvash, a branch of Turkic languages, plural. There are differing opinions regarding the Khazars' conversion to Judaism. Some assert that all Khazars accepted Judaism, while others argue that only the Khazar Khan and his immediate circle adopted the faith. Ananias Zajaczkowski, a Lithuanian Khazar Turk and Jewish scholar, presents a unique perspective, claiming that all three religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, were officially recognized in the Khazar Empire. He suggests that the Khan practiced Islamic rituals on Fridays, Jewish observances on Saturdays, and Christian services on Sundays. Ibn Rushd provides an intriguing insight, stating that the chief of the Khazars, along with military commanders and other prominent figures of the state, were Jewish, while the remaining population adhered to a religion similar to that of the Turks. If we summarize these views and various claims, it can be said that alongside Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, the ancient Turkish belief of Göktengriism also existed in the Khazar Empire. It is noted that Christianity did not penetrate the Khazar court, with only a portion of the Khazars converting due to the efforts of some missionaries. Historians argue that the Khazar Khan officially adopted Christianity as the state religion to secure Byzantine support in Crimea. However, he was unable to obtain assistance. Despite this, a significant community within the Khazars embraced Christianity, which eventually dissolved among the Russians and other Slavic groups after the empire's collapse. Additionally, following the fall of the Khazars, it is said that Jewish Khazars converted to Christianity under Russian pressure and became Russified. According to historical sources, these Christianized Khazars formed the Russian noble class known as the Boyars. In Ukraine, some Cossack tribes are known to be Christian, yet still celebrate the Jewish Sabbath. This tradition is a significant indicator of the enduring influence of the Khazars or their descendants among certain Cossack groups. The visibility and spread of Islam among the Khazars began during the Arab-Khazar Wars. However, the expansion of Islam in Khazar territory occurred more through Muslim Arab traders than through military conflict. Although the Khazar Khan was compelled to accept Islam after Marwan ibn Muhammad captured the capital Itil in 737, he reverted to his old faith following Marwan's death. The Arab historian al-Masudi notes that the majority of the population in the capital Itil was Muslim, and that there were 7 judges in the land, with 2 of them overseeing Muslim cases. He highlights that most Khazar Muslims were Khwarezmians serving in the military, renowned as skilled warriors, and the Khan placed great trust in them. Al-Masudi mentions that there was a significant agreement between the Muslim soldiers and the Khan. After the empire's collapse, this Muslim community blended into the Pechenegs, Cumans, and other Turkic tribes, ultimately merging with them. There are various opinions regarding when Judaism arrived among the Khazars. While Islamic sources state that the Khazars accepted Judaism during the reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid in 785, some accounts claim that it was introduced by a Jewish scholar named Isaac Sangari, a Karaite, who migrated from Sakaria to Khazaria in 670. The only written source regarding the Khazars' conversion to Judaism is a letter from Khan Yusuf. In this letter, the process of Khan Bulan's conversion to Judaism is briefly outlined. The Khan sent various gifts and messengers to the Byzantine Emperor and the Arab Caliph, requesting them to convert to their religions. Khan Bulan invited knowledgeable representatives of the three faiths to the palace, asking them to explain their religions. After each scholar defended their own faith as the true one, the Khan inquired which religion, aside from their own, was the second most valid. The Muslim and Christian clerics both cited Judaism as the second valid faith. Consequently, Khan Bulan concluded that among them, Judaism was the best choice, leading him to adopt the religion. Alongside this narrative, there exists a similar yet distinct version told by the Andalusian geographer and historian al-Bekri. He recounts that the Khazar Khan initially accepted Christianity, but later became disillusioned after recognizing certain errors. Upon receiving advice, he invited representatives from the three religions to his palace to hold a debate. During this debate, the Christian cleric was defeated by the Jewish cleric who, through bribery, ensured that the Muslim cleric could not attend. Consequently, the Khan accepted Judaism. Beyond these accounts, a widely accepted and rational perspective suggests that the Khazar Khan adopted Judaism as a political maneuver to avoid the influence of the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Caliphate. The question of which sect of Judaism the Khazar Khan and the state officials accepted remains a subject of debate, similar to the discussions mentioned earlier. Scholars continued to debate whether the Khazars adhered to the Talmudic Judaism recognized by the modern state of Israel or the Karaite sect. Karaite Judaism accepts the Torah like Talmudic Jews, but does not recognize the Talmud or other texts outside the Torah. Originating as a movement opposing Talmudic Judaism, the Karaite sect was initially known by the name of its founder, Anan ben David, as the Ananites. The Karaite sect is believed to have emerged in the 8th century, with its name deriving from the Arabic and Hebrew term kara, meaning to read or to call. Today, a significant majority of those belonging to this sect are of Turkic descent, and they refer to the sect in singular as Karai, and in plural as Karaylar. Those who link the acceptance of Karaite Judaism by the Khazars to the influx of Karaite immigrants expelled from Byzantium in the mid-8th century suggest that it is unclear whether Karaism first emerged in Crimea or in Khazaria. However, after the fall of the Khazar state, Karaites from Khazaria migrated to Crimea, merging with the local Karaite community. As Karaism spread in Khazaria, it also moved closer to southern Russia, expanding northward, with some of the Cumans and Kipchaks embracing the faith. One of the most fundamental debates among historians regarding the Khazars' Judaism pertains to the migration patterns of these Jews after the fall of the Khazar state. Talmudic Jewish researchers connect the roots of East European Jews to Khazar Jews, while others argue that since the Khazar Jews were predominantly Karaite, there is no link between Talmudic Jews in Eastern Europe and the Khazars. Some of the Karaites in Crimea migrated to Lithuania and Poland during various historical periods for several reasons, helping to establish the foundations of the East European Karaite community. The presence of Turkish-speaking Karaite Jews in these regions today attests to this historical migration. After the fall of the Khazar state, there is evidence that Khazar Jews and other Khazar communities migrated to Anatolia and Byzantium. Ethnonyms related to the Khazars can still be found in various places throughout Anatolia. For example, in Sirnak, there is the Idil district, named after the Khazar capital, Itil, which means river, in Chuvash, and the Pechenk village. In Tunceli, there is Khazar village in the Kamiskatsak district, Hezor village in Artvin, Karaboyan village, formerly known as Hazara, in Van, Tandirbasi in Erzincan, formerly known as Hazarek, and Ikidera village in the Off district of Trabzon, formerly known as Hazargrad. It is known that Karaites lived in Byzantium for a long time before and after the fall of the Khazar state, and this community remained undisturbed during the Ottoman period. Following Fatih Sultan Mehmed's conquest of Istanbul, Karaite communities chose the city as their center. The longest established Karaite community in Istanbul was in Haskoy. The name of the Karakoy district in Istanbul is even claimed to derive from Kara village. The Karaite synagogue in the Haskoy neighborhood of Istanbul has a history of nearly 1,000 years. Today, the center of the Karaites is Crimea, where Sift Kale is considered their ancestral homeland. Nearby, Baltatimes, meaning the axe cannot touch, contains their historical cemeteries with sacred oak trees. They refer to their places of worship as Kenasa, and their liturgical language is Turkish. Alongside the Karaites, another Turkish Jewish community known as the Krimchaks also resides in Crimea. The Crimean Tatars distinguish between Karaites, whom they call Zulufsiz Kufutlar, Jews without sideburns, and Krimchaks, referred to as Zuluflu Kufutlar, Jews with sideburns. Currently, approximately 2,000 Khazar Turks live across Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania, and Kazakhstan, with about half residing in Crimea. The number of Karaite Jews in Israel is estimated to be around 40,000. The Khazar Khanate, descendants of the Sabir Turks and the Western Gokturk tribes, represented the western branch of the Gokturk state during the period of Gokturk unity. After the fall of the Gokturk Empire, the Khazars established their independence and settled in the region between the Kuban River and the Sea of Azov. From the 7th to the 10th centuries, they absorbed other Turkic tribes in the area and exerted their dominance in the northern territories of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. The 10th century Islamic historian al-Masudi noted that the Persians referred to this tribe as Khazars, while Turks called them Sabar. Given its strategic location along the migration routes that connected the east to the west, various groups including the Huns, Oghur, Fin-Ugars, and Avars continued to inhabit this region. The exact historical timeline of the Khazars' migration from Central Asia is not definitively known. However, according to Georgian sources, the Khazars arrived in this area long before the Common Era. Their emergence into the historical scene, as reported by sources, occurred around the late 2nd century. In 198, they launched an attack on Armenia alongside the Barsils. From the early 3rd century to the mid-4th century, the Khazars fought against the Sasanian Empire in Armenia alongside the Byzantine Empire. Following the Sasanian conquest of Armenia in the late 4th century, the Khazars aligned themselves with the Byzantines and began warring against the Sasanian Empire. In 363, they participated in a campaign led by Byzantine Emperor Julian against the Sasanian forces in Armenia, providing aid to the Byzantines. In retaliation, the Sasanian Empire enlisted local tribes in the Caucasus to attack the Khazars. The Khazars were forced to submit to the Huns following Attila's rise to power in 434. However, after Attila's death, they broke away from the crumbling Hun Empire and resumed their incursions into Sasanian territories. In response to these attacks, the Sasanian emperor sought assistance from Byzantium. Consequently, hostilities between the Khazars and the Sasanian Empire persisted from 558 onwards, prompting the Sasanian rulers to construct a series of fortresses in Derbent and the passes of the Caucasus. During the 5th century, the Avars also temporarily dominated the Khazars. Sasanian ruler Anushirvan built the fortress of Derbent Bab el-Ebab against the Khazars. Recognizing that he could not defeat the increasingly powerful Khazars, Anushirvan opted to pursue diplomatic relations with them to counter other threats. By 626-627, the Khazars had established an agreement with Byzantine Emperor Heraclius, and under the command of Khazar Turks, they successfully captured all of Azerbaijan up to the Aras River and asserted dominance over several Armenian populations. Although they were unable to capture Tbilisi during the winter of 628, the city fell to the Khazar commander Khazar Turks in 629. This marked the decline of the Sasanian Empire as a major power and solidified the Khazar Khanate as a key ally of Byzantium against Iran. At this time, the Khazars were not yet an independent state. However, following the division of the Turk state into western and eastern branches in 582 and the eventual collapse of the western Turk state, the Khazars emerged as an independent Khanate. By 630, they had achieved full independence, rapidly expanding their political and military influence. The weakening of the Sasanian Empire, due in part to Khazar-Byzantine cooperation, led to its downfall at the hands of Islamic forces between 632 and 634. With the Islamic armies capturing Iranian territories, the Islamic advance began to extend towards the Caucasus through Armenia and into Anatolia via Syria. The conflicts between the Arabs and the Khazars were intense and prolonged. The first significant Arab incursion occurred during the Caliphate of Umar in 651. 652, when Islamic forces invaded Khazar territory and advanced to Derbent, reaching as far as Belencer, the Khazar capital at the time, but were ultimately repelled by the Khazars. Following the Arab occupation of Belencer, the Khazars relocated their capital to the lower Volga region and subsequently advanced south into Armenia. In response to the powerful Khazar expansion, the great Bulgaria Khanate in the north of the Black Sea succumbed and split into two groups, the Idle Bulgars and the Danube Bulgars. Consequently, the plains stretching up to the Dnieper River fell into Khazar control, effectively blocking routes against the Islamic advance in the southern Caucasus. By the end of the 7th century, the Khazars captured Crimea and established complete dominance around the Sea of Azov, gaining control over all territories from the Caspian Sea to the Dniester and the southern foothills of the Caucasus. Following the initial encounter in 651, 652, and the political turmoil following the assassination of Caliph Osman in 656 and the selection of Caliph Ali, the Khazars seized the opportunity to expand southward, reaching as far as Iran. The Khazar-Islam wars persisted for over half a century, marked by border skirmishes, until the Islamic armies resumed their Caucasian incursions during the reign of Umayyad Caliph Muawiyah. However, in 717, the Arabs had to abandon their march toward Istanbul from the Caucasus, leading to the retreat of other Arab forces confronted by the Khazars. Consequently, the Khazar army invaded Shirvan from 717 to 718, occupying a significant portion of Azerbaijan. As the region frequently changed hands between the two states, the Islamic armies were unable to advance beyond northern Caucasia. In 731, the Khazars regrouped their forces to launch a counterattack against the advancing Arabs, delivering a significant defeat to them. This victory was notable, as the Khazars had previously faced setbacks against the Arabs, resulting in the death of the Armenian governor, Serah. The Khazar army advanced as far as Mosul, forcing the Arabs to retreat once again into Azerbaijan. However, the Arabs, reorganized under the command of Said al-Harishi, managed to push the Khazars back. In 733, Marwan ibn Muhammad, who would later become caliph, was appointed governor of Armenia and Azerbaijan. During his tenure, the Arabs achieved significant victories, capturing Semender and several Khazar cities. The Khazar Khan, having sustained casualties and taken prisoners, agreed to peace on the condition of recognizing Arab dominance and accepting Islam. According to the resulting agreement, 2 scholars would remain in the Khazar capital of Idil to teach Islam to the Khazars. However, the Khan's conversion did not last long, as he reverted to his old religion shortly after the Arabs departed. Thus, Islam struggled to gain a foothold among the Khazars and other tribes in the region. Following Marwan's campaign, Islamic-Khazar relations generally remained amicable. The Khazars' last incursions into Muslim territories occurred during the reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid. The caliph sent his commander, Yazid, against the Khazars, successfully driving them out of Armenia. After this campaign, there are no further mentions of Khazar attacks in Arab sources, signaling the end of the Arab-Khazar struggle for dominance in southern Caucasia. During the 7th and 8th centuries, the Khazars, who had strengthened their influence, managed to subjugate the Crimean Goths in the 7th century. In 787, they captured the fortress of Doros, present-day Mangop, in southern Crimea, effectively ending Gothic rule in the region. The Khazar Khaganate expanded its territories westward and northward in the 8th and 9th centuries, establishing itself as one of Eastern Europe's powerful states and collecting taxes from various tribes. As the Khazars gained control over the northern shores of the Black Sea, their relations with Byzantium intensified. In 695, the deposed Emperor Justinian II fled to the Goths in Crimea, who handed him over to Khazar Khan Basir, who later married his sister to Justinian II. According to historian Theophanes the Confessor, when Byzantine Emperor Tiberius III offered a reward for Justinian's capture in 705, Basir ordered his death. However, Justinian managed to escape with his wife's help and returned to Constantinople. With assistance from the Bulgarian ruler Khan Tervel, he reclaimed the throne. In 710, the Khazars, who had seized Cherson, declared war on him. Despite capturing Cherson, the Chersonite rebels, aided by the Khazars, took Crimea. The army that went to war switched allegiances in 711, leading to the execution of Justinian II. The collaboration between the Khazars and Byzantines against the Arabs continued during the reign of Emperor Leo III. Leo arranged for his son, Constantine V, to marry the daughter of Khazar Khan Bihar. This alliance fostered trade relations between the two nations. In 834-835, the Khazars sought to protect themselves from invasions by requesting assistance from Byzantine Emperor Theophilus to build Sarkel fortress. However, relations between the Khazars and Byzantines soured during the reign of Emperor Romanos Lecapenus due to Byzantium's treatment of Jews. Many Jews expelled from Byzantium sought refuge in Khazar territory, leading to a renewed alliance in 932. In response, the Khazar Khan began persecuting Christians in his domain, prompting Romanos to ally with Igor, the Prince of Kiev, to launch a campaign against the Khazars. Tensions escalated further as Byzantium formed alliances with the Uzes, Pechenegs, Oz, and Alans to attack the Khazars, although the Khazars successfully repelled these invasions. Rus-Khazar relations reportedly began in 859. The chronicles state that the Khazars received a squirrel pelt and silver coin from each household of the Rus tribes, including Polion, Severian, Radomik, and Viatic. In response to these tributes, Novgorod Prince Oleg, who succeeded Rurik, targeted the Severians in 884, who were unwilling to pay taxes to the Khazars. The Rus, along with other Slavic tribes, united against the Khazars, weakening their power. By 892, the Rus ventured into the Caspian Sea with 55 ships, launching raids on Seal and Dalim shores, Tabaristan, and Abaskan, returning with significant plunder. On their way back, they presented part of their loot as tribute to the Khazar Khan. However, upon learning of these developments, the Khan's Muslim soldiers sought permission to attack the Rus, which they successfully executed. From the second half of the 9th century, the Rus began to exert significant influence in the Khazar territory, particularly in trade. This comfort led Prince Igor of Kiev to conquer and settle in the city of Kiev. Following extensive struggles, he seized control of the major trade route leading from the Dnieper River to the Black Sea, liberating several Slavic tribes from Khazar dominance. The Rus also ended Khazar rule in the region and united the scattered Slavic tribes into a cohesive state. In 913, the Rus launched their first campaign against the Khazar Khaganate. This assault occurred with the permission of the Khazar Khagan, who received a portion of the plundered treasures. However, in 925, the Khagan learned that the Rus had mounted another raid without his approval. He dispatched forces to intercept the returning Rus. During Igor's assault on the city of Tmutarakan in the 930s, the Byzantines, with Rus assistance, invaded the Khazar territories in Crimea, capturing parts of the region. In response, Khazar Khagan Aaron II retaliated in 939, devastating Crimea. The Khazars also destroyed the Byzantine fleet during Igor's campaign to Byzantium in 941. In 944, the Rus advanced as far as the city of Barda in Azerbaijan, then the center of Muslim Caucasia, raiding the area. But the Khazars took no action against them. Sviatoslav I, in 965, launched a campaign against the Khazars and captured Sarkel. He pushed further south, inciting the Pechenegs and Oghuz against the Khazars, and subsequently seized the Kerch Strait and the Kuban coast of the Caucasus. Until the mid-9th century, the Khazar Khaganate continued to thrive. But by the late 9th century, it faced numerous attacks from the Turkic tribes residing within its borders. The Kipchaks and Oghuz, advancing from the east, managed to launch assaults on Khazar territory, though the Khazars were unable to completely defeat them. In 854, the Khazars, followed by the Magyars and Bulgars, broke away from Khazar dominance. Additionally, the Pechenek incursions from the east contributed significantly to the weakening of the Khazar Khaganate. The Pecheneks, having escaped Oghuz pressure between 860 and 880, moved westward through Khazar land, crossing the Volga River to settle along the Don and Kuban rivers. The establishment of the Arpad dynasty among the Magyars in the Volga region was a direct result of their organization under Khazar governance. By the late 9th century, the Bulgars and Pecheneks launched attacks on the Magyars, leading to the collapse of this Khazar-protected state and the subsequent settlement of the Magyars in present-day Hungary. In the early 9th century, the Pecheneks resumed their attacks on the Khazars, but the intervention of the Oghuz helped repel these assaults. After the Rus campaign in 965, the Khazars lost much of their former power, with the Rus being the primary force behind their decline, while other Turkic tribes played a secondary role. The onslaughts from Turkic tribes like the Pecheneks, Oghuz, and Kumans, along with the gradual secession of tribes under Khazar rule after 970, led to a significant loss of power for the Khazar. Although some Khazars retreated to Crimea and others to the region between the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus to maintain their existence after 965, the connections between Khazars and territories that fell under the control of various Turkic tribes were severed over time. The tribes referred to as Kipchaks in Eastern sources and Cumans in Byzantine records advanced from western Siberia towards the Volga region, disrupting the Khazars' trade relations with Khwarezm and Turkestan. The Khazars, facing military and economic crises, received a final blow from the Kipchaks. Although they lingered in Crimea for some time, by the 11th century, they had mostly integrated into the Cumans and Rus, ultimately vanishing into these groups. The Cuman Kipchak territory fell to a Mongol invasion in 1299. The political rivalry between the Byzantines and the Khazars arose from the desire to establish dominance over Crimea. The Khazars maintained their presence around Azov and Crimea after Sviatoslav Fun's southern campaign, which resulted in his conquest of the Kerch Strait and the Kuban coasts. According to Byzantine sources, the Russians, in alliance with other Turkic tribes, contributed to the downfall of the Khazar state. Between 1016 and 1019, the Russians, cooperating with Byzantium, attacked Khazar territories in Tmutarakan, and with the assistance of a fleet sent by Emperor Basil II, Tmutarakan and its surrounding lands were seized by Svyatopolk I. The last Khazar Khan, Gorgias Tsul, was captured in this conflict. He converted to Christianity and was given the title Arban. Subsequently, Mstislav became the Prince of Tmutarakan, and with the help of Khazars in his army, fought against his brother Yaroslav I of Kiev in 1022. The final blow to the Khazars, who had established small principalities in the lower Volga, Azov, and Crimea after 1016, was dealt by the Pechenegs in 1030. By 1095, records in Russian chronicles indicate that the Khazars were now referred to as subjects of Russian princes. The Byzantine Emperor provoked a war against the Khazars sent the Byzantine fleet to aid the Russian army. The Khazar Khaganate collapsed in the 11th century, influenced by the Byzantine Empire. According to Saban Kuzgun, the reasons for the Khazar collapse can be divided into internal and external factors. The most significant external factor was the strategic geographical importance of the territory held by the Khazars. Key internal reasons include the vast expansion of the Khazars, leading to a loss of unity in religion, language, culture, interest, and faith. The increase in indulgence and comfort within the country. The disruption of the military system and the structure of the Khanate. According to Golden, the unexpected collapse of the Khaganate in the second half of the 10th century was inevitable. He argues that the fall of the Khazars was not due to their Jewish identity, but rather the weaknesses of their decentralized nomadic state structure and the changing economic balances in the Itil region. After the collapse of the state, some Khazars did not vanish immediately but dispersed among various nations, including the Magyars, and served in protecting the Hungarian borders. Timothy Miller discovered that Jewish Khazars were members of the para-Jewish community in the Byzantine Empire around the 11th century. Dunlop suggests that despite the Russians having a naval power, the lack of a Khazar navy led to their loss of superiority in land battle. The administrative structure of the Khazar Khaganate was essentially a continuation of the Göktürk state structure, but with some differences. According to the work Hudud al-Alam, the Khagan at the helm came from the Ashina lineage and was regarded as divinely ordained according to Turkic traditions. Thus, belonging to a specific lineage was necessary to become a Khagan. The Khaganate was hereditary, passed down from father to son, and it was believed that the Khagans descended from a she-wolf named Asena. Both the Western Turks and the Khazars practiced the tradition of killing the Khagan. According to the Arab historian Istari, a limit was set on the time a Khagan could live after assuming office, and upon the expiration of this time, the Khagan would be executed. Ibn Fadlan noted that if a Khagan remained on the throne for at least 40 years, the state officials and the people would consider him incapable of thinking and judging due to old age, leading to his execution. Like other Turkic states, the Khazars believed in the Khagan's sacred power and position. When the people faced drought, famine, military failures, or other misfortunes, the Khagan was held responsible, which could result in his death. The Khagan's assistant was called Kundur, and his deputy was known as Kabaskir. Aside from these three individuals, no one could approach the Khagan. If the army sent against the enemy suffered defeat, those who fled would be killed, and both the commander and the Khagan's assistant would face punishment. Other tribes subordinate to the Khazars were governed by officials known as Il-Teba or Tudun, sent from the center. The Khagan's wife was referred to as Hatun, as in other Turkic states. After the Khagan's death, he would be interred in a meticulously prepared mausoleum. As time progressed, the position of the Khazar Khagan weakened. Old Pritsak noted that the historian Al-Yaqubi's records from the 9th century indicate that the Khagan was the highest-ranking ruler and military commander in 799. But by 833, he had begun to share his authority with another official known as the Bek. By the 10th century, the Khagan had been reduced to a nominal spiritual leader, while the Bek was the one handling state affairs. As Ibn Fadlan described, the Bek held the authority to impose bans, punish, grant pardons, and manage state affairs. Nevertheless, in the hierarchical structure of that era, the Khagan remained in a position of nominal importance, second only to the Bek. One of the Bek's key responsibilities was military command. The third tier of Khazar administration was occupied by individuals called Kender, and the deputy of the Kender was known as Haviskar. The fifth rank was held by Tarkhan, whose duty was to command regiments within the Khazar army or oversee auxiliary forces. Tarkhan was also the title of the local governor of Atil in the 8th century. According to Istari, the Khazar army numbered 12,000. With few exceptions, soldiers were not regularly paid and received their wages at irregular intervals over long terms. The Khazars did not have paid soldiers, and the defense of cities was managed by volunteers. However, by the mid-9th century, with the development of trade, the number of those engaged in military professions declined, leading to an increase in paid soldiers. Additionally, Iranian-origin Muslim soldiers called Arsiya, brought from Khwarezm, served as the special guards of the Khazar Khagan. Slavic Russians were also part of the Khazar army. There is no evidence of a Khazar naval force. Local governors serving in Khazaria were called Tudun, appointed by the Khazar Khagan. Tuduns collected taxes and were responsible for customs. There were also coastal security personnel referred to as fishers. In some cities, there were also elected officials who held similar responsibilities to the Tuduns and fishers. One such Babakuk, father of the city, governed Cherson from 705 to 840. Another Babakuk was the ruler of Tmutarakan in 703. The Khazars also influenced the governance of the Kievan Principality established by the Kievan Rus. In the epic Igor's campaign, the title of Prince Igor of Novgorod Tversk is Khagan. The work Hudud al-Alam also refers to Igor as the Rus Khagan. The Khazars established a systematic legal framework that ensured representation of all faiths in the court, fostering an environment of tolerance. In the capital, a high court was formed by 7 chief judges representing 4 different faiths. The court in Atil primarily handled commercial disputes. The most significant archaeological sites revealing the architectural and artistic achievements of the Khazars are the capital of the Khazar Khaganate Sarkel, the city of Mayatsko, and the Salvata Kurgans. Additionally, important Khazar artifacts have been discovered in the Caucasus, along the Don River, and in the Dnieper region. Although no written documents from the Khazars have survived, hindering our understanding of their language and culture, they were a Turkic nation that retained much of their nomadic character from Central Asia. The tradition of seasonal migration between different regions continued within the Khazar Khaganate. Typically residing in urban areas during winter, Khazar communities would leave the cities in spring and live in pastures and steppes until winter returned. Research conducted by Soviet archaeologists indicates that the Khazars had achieved a much higher levels of civilization compared to the Huns. Khazar homes were constructed using wood, featuring a tent-like structure covered with felt, known as harga, or large tents. Brick was employed in the construction of buildings belonging to the Khan and public buildings. Excavations have uncovered round-based houses resembling the yurt tents used by the Turks, reflecting the transition from a nomadic lifestyle to a more settled way of living. Subsequent findings also revealed rectangular houses. The discovery of Khazar-made jewelry, ornate dishes, mirrors, and various decorative items in the corridors of Sarkel Fortress indicates that Khazars were highly skilled in gold and silver craftsmanship, and it had a keen interest in adornment and clothing. The influence of Khazar culture can also be observed in nearby regions where figures such as Prince Vladimir, who is known for converting to Christianity, adopted the title Khan. While Russians wore short jackets, the Khazars, Bulgars, and Pechenegs donned longer coats, which were akin to the kaftans worn by Ashkenazi Jews in the 19th century. Both Turkish men and women traditionally wore their hair braided. According to a 7th century Chinese source, only the Turkic Khan was permitted to wear his long hair freely, while all other nobles and warriors were required to braid theirs. The Khazar language is considered to belong to the Old Turkic period, 6th to 10th century. Since no written work in the Khazar language has survived, there is no definitive information regarding the language they spoke. 2 documents from the Khazars still exist, both written in Hebrew. One is a letter from Khazar Khan Joseph to a statesman in service to Emir Abd al-Rahman III of the Umayyads in Cordoba, dated around 960 AD, while the other consists of fragments of a letter from an unidentified Jewish Khazar during the same period, found in Egypt. Researchers like Barthold and Minorsky suggest that Khazar was closely related to the language of the Volga-Bulgars, and that Chuvash, which is part of the Turkic languages, bears similarities to both Bulgarian and Khazar. Moreover, investigations have revealed that various Turkic languages were spoken in the Khazar territory alongside Khazar. The Karachais, Balkars, and Caucasians have also retained some words from this language in their own. Karaites living in Poland, who are Jewish, continue to use the ancient Khazar language. Within the Khazar Khaganate, multiple religions coexisted. The primary and longest-lasting faith among the Khazars was Tengriism, which involved reverence for nature's powers, similar to other ancient Turkic peoples. Christianity emerged as another religion within the state from early on, while Islam spread during the Arab conquests, largely through Khwarezmian merchants. The Jews of Dagestan also sought to promote Judaism. The spread of Christianity among the Khazars ended in the early 8th century due to the expansion of Arab conquests in southern Caucasia and Azerbaijan. However, after the fall of the Khazar Khaganate, the Christian populace was assimilated into the Russian Orthodox Church. Although the Khazar Khaganate officially accepted Judaism as its state religion, it remains uncertain to which sect of Judaism they adhered. According to al-Masudi, the Khazar Khan converted to Judaism during the reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid, 786-809. However, the account in the Life of Constantine suggests that the Khan's acceptance of Judaism occurred in 861. While the details of how the Khazars adopted Judaism remain unclear, evidence indicates that Jewish communities existed in Eastern Europe prior to this. Following persecution by the Sasanian and Byzantine empires, Jews who settled in Dagestan began to spread their religion. Furthermore, the Khazar Khaganate welcomed Jewish immigration from regions including Mesopotamia and Khwarezm, modern-day Uzbekistan. Al-Masudi noted that although Muslim and Christian communities were more numerous than Jews in the capital Itil, one of the 7 primary judges in the country adhered to the ancient Tengri faith. 2 were Christian, 2 were Jewish and 2 were Muslim. During the reigns of Bulan Khan and Obadiah Khan, the spread of Judaism gained momentum, yet the Khans did not intervene in the religious beliefs of their people. By the 10th century, Judaism had become the dominant faith among the Khazars. Although a Khan who faced defeat against Islamic forces led by Mervan ibn Muhammad indicated he would convert to Islam, he soon reverted to his previous beliefs. After the withdrawal of the Islamic armies, 2 Islamic scholars attempted to propagate Islam. During the onset of Islamic conflicts and outbreaks of disease in Khwarezm, some Khazars migrated to their territory, later joining the army under conditions that allowed them to worship freely, call the Adhan, build mosques, and not engage in warfare against Muslims. Conversely, Omeljan Pritsak attributes the Khazars' conversion to Judaism primarily to the influences of the Radhanite traders and Iranian Jewish merchants. Genetic research conducted in 1999 on Y chromosomes from Ashkenazi Jews revealed DNA structures that were closer to those of Turkic origins than to those of Israel.